webinar, Real Estate Today, organized by Ubosele and Company, where we discuss topical issues every month. And it's great to have you all join us. I can see that we had quite some number of people join us much more earlier, even before we have the adverts playing on ground. Thank you once again for joining. Thank you once again for joining us, and it's such a pleasure. So I would just want the advert to please play just another 2-3 minutes, just for us to run a few things. Then we'll come back and start immediately. Chopper, please, can we still have the advert play for maybe another 2-3 minutes? Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. It's great to have you on this webinar, and you're all welcome. It's going to be a wonderful time, and I'm sure that you're all ready for us to have a wonderful ride in this May edition of the webinar organized by Ubosele and Company. I sure believe you can tell someone else to mention to someone else, and someone else to mention to someone else that we've started and we are good to go. And so they can also join us. Try as much as possible to invite so many persons to join, so we can have a wonderful and pleasant time learning one or two things. Before we delve into it immediately, like I said earlier on, this webinar is organized by Ubosele and Company. We pride ourselves in what we do, and we believe strongly that for the past years that we started this webinar, it's been a wonderful time that we've heard. And I believe that today will not be an exception. Before we go in, we'd like to just set some ground rules. I know that this topic we're going to be dealing with today is a subject that we may want to have one or two questions, contributions from people on the platform. So you're all welcome. If you have any question, you can use the chat room to drop your question while the presentation is ongoing. Also, if you want us to promote you as one of the panelists, that you want to make a comment, or you want to ask questions, we'll gladly oblige you. Just showing off of your hand, and I'll get the back end to, after the webinar is done, I'll get the back end to bring you up so that you can make your contribution and you can also ask your question. Having said that, I think we're good to go. Last month, the month of April, we spoke on, the webinar was handled by one of our partners, Mr. Chudi Ubosi, who spoke on legal and regulatory issues in real estate development and the need for compliance. It was a wonderful time. Today, we'll be looking at another topic, prominent factors to be considered in credible valuation reports. Prominent factors to be considered in a credible valuation report. Valuation reports is an instrument that we use, and we know how significant and how important valuation report is to all the end users. I have with us this morning one of our partners also, who will be speaking on this subject matter, and I'm going to yield the floor to her just immediately after I introduce her. I would like to bring on board Charity Ikuba, who is one of our partners and work from the VI office. So Charity, good to have you. You're welcome. So let's get this rolling. We're talking on prominent factors to be considered in a credible valuation. And it's good to have you on board. Charity, how are you this morning? Good afternoon, sorry.
I am doing great. Sonja, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, and to the audience too. I appreciate your joining us this morning. Thank you very much. And I believe that our coming together this morning is going to be an insightful and impactful section between us this morning as we look into prominent factors to be considered in a credible valuation report. Why? Sorry, let me share my screen. Excuse me. My screen. Okay. Let me welcome us again to Real Estate Today. And we are going to be looking at a topic that talks about prominent factors to be considered in a credible valuation report. And valuation reports is valuation, as it were, is one of our key bits as an estate surveyor and valuer. So at the end of the processes that goes around valuation, what we produce is a valuation report, and that valuation report is being used by all the stakeholders to make an informed decision on their real estate or an investment properties. So before we start that, I think I need to lay a bit of background as to what valuation is. Valuation, as it well, is a process of determining or estimating the worth of property or other assets at a particular date for a specific purpose, which could be sales, purchase, insurance, probate, balance sheet, rating, going concern, investment analysis, feasibility and viability studies, etc., etc. So valuation, as it were, is actually a process whereby we determine the value or present value of an asset, and this value will help the stakeholders to take up a decision regarding whatever they want to use their property for. So as it were, we have to now move to what valuation report is. Like I said earlier, that valuation is the bit of an estate surveyor and valuer. We have been licensed by law to carry out valuation processes. And the document that we produce is at the end of our valuation process is a document that is called valuation report. And in order for you to know that a particular report is credible and it is also good for use, there are salient points that we also need to consider in such report. So valuation report is a comprehensive document that employs data analysis to evaluate an asset and property to determine its worth. And as it were, this report is actually a detailed assessment that talks about the functionality, the state of obsolescence, the general condition of the property, and even the location and other factors are not left out. And all of these factors impacts value. So this process involves thorough review of all other attributes that is associated with property or asset. And when you talk about, if you are looking at the plant and machinery, you have to look at the functionalities, status, the state of obsolescence, how well it is. And when you talk about the physical building, you are looking at other attributes like the size, the age, and the construction quality that is being used for a particular report. And valuation process really, play a very crucial role in ensuring the quality and accuracy of valuation process. In our world of today, where people go into all kinds of investments, in order for you to have a backup, a document that you can present anywhere in the world. So that document is that valuation report that have been carefully prepared, and the quality and the accuracy of the data that has been analyzed, and all of this form into a valuation report that we can use, that a prospective or business owner can use to, get loans, facilities. And that's why, if you look at my slide, I talked about from the view of a lender and financial institution, valuation report is, a credible valuation report mitigates again the risk associated loans, real estate loans and other assets that might be used as collateral. And when processing this, the lender will have, the lender or the stakeholders that might be using the report will have confidence in the estimated value that have been presented to them as collateral. An accurate appraiser ensures that the value of the property or the asset is not overstated or understated. This thereby reduces the likelihood of any form of default that could occasion from a not credible valuation. So when conducting this appraisal, the lender verified the credibility of the report by also, reviewing it. And when they review, they can confidently use it to make an informed decision concerning their investment. Then we also need to, there are various forms of valuation reports that that a valuer can prepare, and we have a whole lot of them. But in our own client, there are two major valuation reports. It's not as if others are also not equally important, but the one that is, that is key, that virtually all the valuers in Nigeria involved in. You talked about valuation for mortgage, valuation for mortgage, as well as insurance valuation. Those are the two major that, well, in our day-to-day activity as a valuer, those are the major two that we do, but we have a lot of them. And according to Nigerian Green Book, we have valuation for financial reporting. Of course, the valuer has to value both the assets and liability. This information is included in financial statements according to accounting standard. And the one that I mentioned earlier, that I talked about valuation for mortgage, the lender and financial institution, when processing their loan, that is the kind of report that we rely on. And that the report actually serves as a collateral security for their loans. And if you also look at valuation for merger and acquisition, as its name goes, merger and acquisition, when two business entities is coming together, they try to know what each other what. And if a particular business entity wants to acquire another business to an existing business that is already going on, they also acquired they also need to prepare a valuation report that can actually show the fair value of the asset to be acquired. Then we can also talk about valuation reports for valuation for investment analysis. This one is a form of report that an investor will require to actually know the value of a potential investment to go into. You know, they know the future income or future financial return that comes to them. So they request for investment analysis of that business or the business that they want to go into, and other factors too that may influence investment or decision. So we also look at valuation for taxation purposes. You know, in order to determine a taxable value of an asset for tax assessment, you know, a credible valuation, taxation valuation needs to be prepared to support every of tax planning and strategy. Then we also look at valuation for litigation support. You know, valuation report for litigation support. This aid or assist the legal proceeding, such as dispute resolution, arbitration, and litigation. It offers an impartial evaluation of the worth of an asset or businesses in dispute. You know, when there are issues of litigation, so that the parties don't need to feel cheated, an impartial valuation document is presented that is devoid of a form of objectivity, subjectivity from either of the people involved in this legal proceeding. Then valuation for insurance purpose. You know, this is also done in order to determine the premium to be paid for an insurable properties. You know, valuation reports that will be prepared for insurance purpose will actually include all the, in case there is a damage or there is a fire outbreak, they'll be able to, you know, determine the worth of their assets based on the valuation reports that will be presented. And we also have valuation for financial restructuring when there's a bankruptcy proceeding. You know, the assets or the assessment of the value of the asset and liability is actually facilitated to aid the restructuring processes. And valuation for regulatory compliance, it ensures that people complies with the regulation requirements relating to valuation, as the valuation of assets for regulation reporting purpose or complies with industry or specified regulation. Then, and we have other valuation reports which include, you know, for probate, we have for sales and for purchase. It depends on the one that you will need. You know, the valuation reports are actually prepared based on the purpose. So your purpose determine, and we have a lot of that we can actually prepare a credible valuation to support every of our every area that we may deem requires it. So, you know, when we talk about credible valuation report, we are also looking at the importance whereby valuation report is something that we can really not do away with, except we just want to be economical with the truth, because there are some of the factors that the valuation report will reveal. You know, sometimes we just assumed value. We just say, my property worth S, A, and B, without, you know, consulting the right person to carry out a credible valuation report for us. So in order for us to know what we are to expect, so these are some of the things, some of the importance why valuation report is something that we cannot do away with. So if you have your valuation report as a business owner, or you request for it as an owner, you discover that when you have your report, you'll be able to identify some errors and inconsistencies. It is only the valuation report that would have pointed that out for you. Because if you are just relying on an assumed value, you just assume that your property worth A and B without having a credible valuation report to support your claim. But even when a report is being submitted to the prospective client, the client will need to also check, to check or review the report that has been submitted. They can also identify errors, and in so doing, they will be able to know if the valuer or the appraiser uses an outdated information to prepare a report. And once that is done, it will certainly lead to inaccurate valuation value. Then another importance that valuation reports will also pointed out, you'll be able to discover biases and subjectivity. When I talked about biases and subjectivity, like I earlier mentioned, an assumed value, this is what my property worth, subjectivity, based on your own, on your own belief or what you think that it could be. But when you have a credible valuation report, all of that will be put aside, because the valuation report will be done based, having analyzed all the data that is available, comparable of similar properties and other parameters. You discover that the valuation report will be based on objective criteria. Then another thing that valuation report will point out to you, there's no way you prepared a valuation report without complying with the industry standard. Valuation all over the world has the same process. The same industry patterns is also made available to every other nations of the world. You must comply with valuation, the international valuation standard, and which will also include the introduction. And this introduction will talk about the scope, the purpose of the valuation, and also the dates will be mentioned. For every credible valuation report, it must have a scope, the purpose for which the valuation exercise is being done, and also an effective date of valuation where it was carried out, date of inspection. Then there will also be a summary of value, a summary of the findings of, for a valuer. From the valuer point of view, he will gather the information, and those information would, he will have to process the data that he has gathered, and in doing so, there will also be evaluation approaches that you need to employ, and that will bring us back to the purpose I talked about. So the purpose of valuation would determine the basis of the valuation to be carried out, and that basis will also inform the method or the approach to be used. Then data analysis. Having considered all of this, you must analyze your data. You don't just fix a value based on what you feel. You analyze this data, and you will also need to include assumption and other limiting factors. If the property has a crack, you mention it. If the machines are not functioning properly as at the time of valuation, that has to be mentioned. Then you also look at the risks that might be associated with such such property or asset. Then also in that same report, you will also make available the discount and the capitalization rate that was used. You also need to also look at the financial projection of the investment. Then you do your market analysis and also comparables analysis of similar properties. All of these you look at too. Then you also, the concluding part of the valuation that will lead to the opinion of value. And for every credible valuation report, you also need to disclose any form of conflict that might be, that you feel that you must have observed during the process of valuation. And to crown it all, there will be a signature and certification. There will be a signature on it and certification, a seal of authority that the report is credible. Then another thing that your valuation report will point out to you is the market analysis. And this market analysis, you ought to, will bring us to other, the market trend. You try to analyze the market trend, the condition of the property, and also the economic factors. Having put all of this together, then you validate this, you validate the value that is being, the true value that is being presented. So for every credible valuation report that a client must have gotten, those are the things that your valuation report will help you discover. You'll be able to identify the errors inherent in it, and you also discover if there are biases or the report is not being objective. And you also be sure that what they are giving to you meet up with the industry standard. Then you also know that the same report has passed the test of proper assessment that will eventually give way to the true value of the property. Then how do we understand this process? The valuation process is actually a crucial step in determining any value of an asset or property, whether you are buying or you are acquiring or you are selling, you are refinancing or refinancing a mortgage, or even liquidating an asset. Understanding how property valuation works can help to ensure a fair and accurate valuation. So we are going to be looking at the various aspects that valuation process will need to go through for you to have a credible valuation report. Number one, the credibility of the valuer also determine, in a way, speaks volume of what you are going to get as a report. If the valuer is a quack, when I mean a quack, someone that has not been licensed nor recognized by law to practice estate surveying and valuation, that will bring us to the role of a valuer. A valuer must be someone that is licensed by the registration board, Nigeria Institute of Estate Surveyor and Valuer, and also the legal backing of the SVABON, which is the government governing body. The valuer must be knowledgeable, must be someone that is knowledgeable, has the adequate skill, and also the experience to carry out valuation. Someone that is experienced, that has the right skill, will know how to analyze, get data, analyze, and also come up with a credible report that will stand the test of time, that will stand any form of scrutiny from the stakeholder, and the report can be relied upon for any kind of informed decision. And second to that will be that data collection. And data collection in a place like in our own client, for you to carry out valuation with a credible valuation process, you have to get enough adequate information, you know, a good number, a wealth of it for you to get a credible valuation. And having done that, you have to also, you need to know the method. Like I said earlier, I said the purpose would determine the basis and the method of valuation to be employed, you know, and that can only be done by a certified estate surveyor and valuer. So the method of valuation to be used, we have, for the purpose of this webinar, we have 5. And in that 5, we have 3 that are the most commonest used method of valuation in our own client, and which is comparable. And the comparable, there are no elements of method of valuation that don't make use of comparable. At least you required a rental evidence, you required a market evidence of whatever asset or property that you are valuing. So comparable methods is one of the methods that is used globally, you know. And next to that, comparable method can be used for both properties and both when I mean properties, I'm talking about both movable and immovable assets. So comparable property method of valuation can be used. Then while contractor and cost method of valuation can be used whereby, in a situation whereby comparable evidence is scarce, then you can make recourse to contracted method of valuation. And it can also be used for property that hardly change hand in the market, in open market, you know, those kind of property like church, mosques, and some historical properties. Those are things that don't easily change hand in the market. So contractor method of valuation will be applied. Then if you also look at the profit method is a method of valuation that can be used for all these income-oriented kind of businesses, which is hotels, filling stations, and a big mall. But in this part of the world, information are kept in secrecy. So their books are not being made available. So valuers may or may not even want to use the profit method of valuation. And the other one is residual method of valuation. And that can only be used for property that has developmental potential, you know, that has a little value. So that can be used for such property. Then, and lastly, the investment method of valuation can be used for an income generating property. You know, you want to determine the rental value of a property. Investment method of valuation is most suitable for that, and is also called income method. Investment method is also known as income method of valuation. Then the next one, having done all of that, if you have determined your valuation method to be employed and carefully analyze your data that you have collated, then you put all of these together, and also know any limiting factors that might want to impede your valuation process. You ought to consider all of this, and that will now lead to one preparing a valuation report that can be tendered for the client or any stakeholders or use. So understanding these processes will enable one, you know what to do regarding his or her property, both movable, and immovable, both tangible and intangible assets. So now we are going to be looking at other factors that affect valuation processes, that could also affect the valuation report if care is not taken. And if that is not, these factors can influence the value of an asset if they are not properly managed and also, assessed. Number one is location. The location of a property, for instance, has a bearing with the value that will be turned out. If you have a property in a well-organized neighborhood, for those of us in Lagos, you have your property in Ikoyi, in other area within Lagos, of course, the value that will come out from there can be compared to other locations. If you have for example, you have your property in Lagos and other states in Nigeria, they are, even when they are the same in features or in size, but their value cannot be the same. A property in a highbrow area will command a higher value compared to the one that is not in a well-organized environment. The location now, you are looking at nearness to your place of work, nearness to school, nearness to market, and other factors, a good amenities within that neighborhood that will also help to increase the value of and it's also vice versa. If it is not in a good area, the value will not be appreciated. Then the second one is the size and conviction. A larger property, as it were, will command a higher value compared to a smaller property. And a property that is well maintained, with a good condition, there are no cracks or anything around it, or an asset that is well maintained, consistently, will have a higher value compared to the one that is run down, that requires repairs. Then another thing that could also affect valuation report or process is comparables properties. And when we talk about comparable properties, there are no two properties that are the same. They might look alike, but in size, it might be different. And even the number of the accommodation units in such property too will also be different. From a layman point of view, when you are not an estate surveyor and valuer, you just see two buildings on 2 floors, you just assume that they are the same thing without making recourse to maybe the construction materials that are also used. So that's the one with a good construction materials, the size, that will also increase the value of that. So when making comparables, we also need to be careful of that adjustment. Then the market conditions that could also, that the valuer also needs to consider when preparing the valuation report. You look at the market trend. When you have a hot seller environment, of course, the value of the property will go up. Hot seller in the sense there are higher demand and there are little supply. So the value of the report will go up. Then where you also have a good number of supply and there are no demand, in that scenario, you have a buyer's market. So you must consider the market. The market condition also has a way of affecting the valuation report. And if we also talk about the economic factors, in this why we have to look at the inflationary rate, you know, in our society today, you know, that will also affect the value of the report. Interest rate also is also part of economic factors that can also affect the value of valuation. Then if we look, the last one here, we are looking at the title. We are looking at the title. A property that has a good title, a good number of unexpired term still subsisting on, can also will have a higher value than the one that has a lower number of or a lower number of years that is unexpired. So then we are also going to look at the challenges, the common problem that valuation assessment also face. You know, number one, we are going to be looking at lack of adequate data. You know, in our world, in Nigeria today, there are no adequate and reliable source of data, as it were. But I must give credit to the firm of Ubosiele and Co. You know, for our annual real estate report, which has also helped in this regard. And I will also use this medium to talk to other stakeholders if they can also follow a clue. We have an annual report concerning property across the 36 states in Nigeria, including the FCT, that, you know, we can draw data and information for. And another common problem that we face too is subjectivity in setting, whereby valuation process is being done based on personal assumption. You know, such report is not going through, you know, a proper analysis. You know, it is not objective in nature. Then we should also look at other influence of market condition that I earlier mentioned. You know, if you, that needs to come into play. We are talking about the market trend, then the demand and supply dynamics. So all of this needs to come into place too, and that also affects the valuation process. Then another thing equal is inadequate property inspection. If you, for instance, you go for an inspection and you did not do a thorough inspection, you know, that will affect. And if your job is based on an assumption that the property is okay without noticing a crack somewhere within the building, that will affect the value of the buyer. It will lead to an incorrect assessment. Then legal and regulatory compliance. You know, if you don't comply with the legal and regulatory if you don't comply with the legal and regulatory laid down rules, it will affect the value of the property. Then we are also going to look at the legal and ethical consideration in reviewing a credible valuation report. For every valuer, all of this is something that we need to, you know, imbibe or exploit when carrying out a credible valuation report. Number one, you must comply with the valuation standard. Whether we like it or not, we must comply with valuation standard. It's not rocket science. You must follow the laid down rules governing valuation process. Otherwise, the person might run into a legal issue. Then confidentiality. As a valuer, you are not meant to divulge the information of your client except if it is by law. That is the only exception to it. Otherwise, it will also affect the professional credibility when you divulge the information of your client. Then another thing is the conflict of interest. If as a valuer, you have a financial interest in a particular assignment, I think it is advised that you don't take up such assignments. Don't be part of it. Then the next one is competency and professionalism. Whether we like it or not, we should run away from quack. Engage the services of a licensed real estate surveyor and valuer that is competent by law to take up valuation assignments. And lastly, as a valuer, you must take due diligence. You know, don't be coerced to do what you are not supposed to do as a valuer. You know, that will actually amount to, if you are not disciplined, it will amount to unprofessionalism. So I would advise that as a valuer, do your due diligence when carrying out valuation assignments. And if you look at it, you know, this basic and legal consideration, it is something that we don't need to do away. We must comply with the industry standard of valuation, the reporting, and all the things that you are meant to do. You must do it. And don't forget, keep your client's information. It is not meant to be shared. And also stay away. Once you have a vested interest in a particular assignment, you can, you know, you don't need to take up that kind of assignment. And you must be competent. There's no gain shying away from that. What makes you a credible valuer is that you are competent. And don't forget to be diligent in whatever you're doing. I think conclusively, I would say the importance of a credible valuation report cannot be overemphasized. They act as necessary quality control mechanism, ensuring that property values are accurate, reliable, and objective, from lender to real estate professional to homeowners. Everyone benefits from the security that a comprehensive assessment provides by identifying errors, uncovering biases, ensuring regulatory compliance, and also validating market analysis. Appraisal review contributes to a transparent and reliable real estate market, which in turn enable the end users take informed decisions regarding their assets and investments. So thank you for having me, Mr. Sonjo.
Okay, thank you so very much, Charity. That was quite that was a large one, quite one. I have my notice full here, and so thank you once again for that, for doing justice to that topic when we talk about prominent factors to be considered, you know, in a credible valuation report. I've got a few things that we're going to talk about shortly, but before we start talking about them, let me just reiterate that for as many on this call, please, you can, if you want to talk, please don't hesitate to just raise your hand. We'll probably give one or two persons the privilege to. I can see on this call that we have I use the word valuation gurus, I mean, I see quite a lot of people who attended, and I know that there are people who are also into this business, and they do quite a lot of valuation. So if you want to make comments or contribution, please, let's feel free. We can learn and share from your wealth of experience and all that. So please, whilst we're waiting for you to raise up your hand to ask question, or probably to ask your question using the chat box, I will try to engage Charity briefly. Is Charity still there? I can't see your face here. Okay, I hope Charity is still here. I want to be sure. Talkback, please bring Charity. Okay, good. I can see you now. Okay, so yeah, so you raised some major issues on this issue of valuation, and I want us to quickly talk about, I think, three of them. And number one, you talked about the competence, and I mean, what I see from here is that evaluation report, you cannot detach evaluation reports from the one who writes that report or the person who produces that report. Now, when you talked about quacks and all of that, I want you to delve a little bit more into it in terms of competence of people who produce this report. Because you see people who just go all around and brandish and say, people just come about and just say all manner of things. Even the end users of this report, they seem to have an idea and want to dictate, to feel that, oh, I built this property, the property should be what X, Y, Z amount and all that. So can you delve a little bit? You talked about the valuer being someone who is licensed, I need you to shed a little more light into this issue of competence of the valuer of, I mean, because when you reel out all of those things, for me, maybe it also goes beyond just being a licensed person, because I'm just trying to look at, you may be licensed and maybe also not have as much of this information that you reeled out when you talked about compliance with valuation standard. Of course, every day we learn. So can you just shed a bit of more light? There are three things I want us to talk on while we're waiting for people to ask their question and probably want to make comment. Can you shed a bit of more light into the issue with competence of the producer of this report?
Oh, thank you very much, Sonjo. When I talked about competency of the valuer, I am trying to tell us that we should not sort our valuation from a quack. And what it means is that, by law, an estate surveyor and valuer has been given the mandate in Nigeria as of today to value properties. And by so doing, and the person must be someone that is abreast of the industry practice, and also that is also is acquainted with the market, property market, or wherever is reside. It must be someone that is knowledgeable, and experience also come into place. Even as a surveyor, you don't just get out of school and you want to go and value a property. You would have undergone a lot of trainings that will, project you as a valuer. So what I mean by competency, you must be someone that has been licensed by law to practice, and secondly, must have the all the necessary skills that will enable you function properly, and also the experience to analyze between two data. You understand? So those are the kind of people that have competency. Then if you are also okay.
I'm listening. Go ahead, please.
Okay, if you are also someone that you are a valuer and you've not been practicing, there is difference between someone that is actually practicing. There's nothing wrong if you also do a collaboration with someone that is abreast with valuation processes. We all have our beats, even within the industries.
Okay, thank you very much. That's actually a very, very good one. I know there's one question, one or two questions already here, but I'm still, we're going to come back to these questions, right? Let's take a few of our talking points before we come back to those questions. Please, if you need to talk, I've seen two questions, but if you need to talk, please, we can allow you to talk, to make one or two comments. I mean, like I said, we are open to learn from everyone. Now, very good. You also talking about the other thing I note down what you're talking about is you talked about you talk a lot about the process of the valuation. And one of the things that was going through my mind was, oh, with all of these processes, with all of these expectations, how soon is it possible to deliver evaluation reports? Timing, in terms of, you talked about so many things to consider. You talked about title, you talked about market analysis, you talked about quite a whole lot of them in terms of the processes. So in my mind, I was just thinking, you talked about the data too, which incidentally, thankfully, you talked about what you do. I'm still going to come back to the issue with data with Ubosele and co. How do we, in terms of delivering evaluation reports, how soon can you deliver a report for crying out loud? With all of these processes, with all of these expectations and all of that, how soon, in your own estimation, how possible is it for us to, knowing fully well that when you started, you talked about the end users, the stakeholders needs to use this valuation report for informed decisions, right? Maybe they need it like yesterday and all of that. So how do we juxtapose, or how do we bridge the gap between all of the things that has to be done in terms of valuation reports and the timing?
Okay, all boil down to availability of data. As an experienced valuer that has been, over the years, you are experienced, you know what to do at the right time. The turnaround time shouldn't be a problem, because it is something that you do on daily basis. So the information at your disposal, getting all of this together won't be a problem. So averagely, we should be looking at a turnaround time of 48 hours.
Okay. I mean, good enough. I mean, it's good enough. I was just, while I was looking, while you were discussing all of that, I was just looking, okay.
If they are not specialized property, if they are not specialized property, then within the turnaround time shouldn't be more than 48 hours. But when you are dealing with a specialized property that you need to further, carry out a further analysis. So at that point, it will exceed that.
Okay. Thank you, Charity. So before we go to this question, the last thing I want us to discuss from our talking point from the things you talked about is I picked on one particular aspect of your presentation, which was the issue of confidentiality, right? Confidentiality. You talked about the dearth of data on one hand, the fact that we don't have availability of data, and now we're also looking at the issue of confidentiality, where information regarding to, when you talk about confidentiality, what are we looking at here? Because I'm looking at this vis-a-vis when you talk about unavailability of data, right? And you've done the work for someone, and in this industry, you collaborate with other people. How do you ensure that whilst ensuring that you provide data for other end users, the confidentiality of the information of the valuation that you've done is maintained? How is that possible? Or what can we do better so that we don't breach the concept of confidentiality alongside the provision of data?
Oh, thank you very much. When I talk about confidentiality and you're trying to gather information, gather data, you don't have to divulge the owner of the property. For instance, you're talking about Ikoyi. Ikoyi is a big place, and you can use a particular area without making reference to maybe the municipal address. You can bring that up without making reference to, because we have other people within Ikoyi. So you can just make reference without stating the actual property. the actual municipal number nor the street in your findings. I don't know if I have answered that.
Oh, yes, you have. Okay, so Charity, there are quite a lot of questions here. Let's quickly delve into them. But before we go to that question, I think there's somebody who, if the back end, there's someone who raised his hand. Can you please bring that person up? Can you promote that person? And so that if the person is okay, I can see the person. Can you unmute yourself? Introduce yourself and ask your question before we go to the just introduce yourself, then ask the question. Then we'll now go to the questions on the chat box. We have about 5 or 6 questions already. All right, let's hear you.
All right, thank you so much, sir. The Madam Charity, I really appreciate the lecture so far. Adewumi Adeola is my name. I'm actually a developer, estate developer. I've had an experience with estate valuer, which they have to do valuation on the particular property. Now, I have to I have question and also have a request. My request is, let me start by the requesting. I would like to ask if you have this the link after this lecture, or probably the slide, because I have other members that would love to, I'd love to share this with, so that it will be of benefit. So my second question is that of recent, because the case of cost of property in Nigeria generally, especially in Lagos, when we're mentioning Koyi, property is being determined by the people's price, or probably based on the development around and all that. Now, my question is that based on the report of the valuer, most of the time, the owner of the property always have their own property. They always have the cost of their own property. So, peradventure, the person that wants to buy the property actually engage the valuer to do the valuation of the property, and the bank that want to finance maybe might also want to get involved and all that. But the property owner is insisting that probably the valuation cost was the thought was maybe 20 million, and the owner of the property is insisting that I want to get 40 million. So how do we bridge that? How do we, when somebody that wants to buy, the real valuation of the cost of the property is 20 million naira, but the owner insisted that I want to sell it for 40 million naira, and that's not so. How do we bring the owner to the reality of the real valuation of the cost? And which you also said something about the integrity of the valuer, because if the valuer is doing it in favor of the buyer, there might be a problem. So I want more light on that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dewumi. Mr. Dewumi, thank you. Mr. Dewumi Adeola, thank you very much. Charity, please, can you go into it quickly? Thank you.
Mr. Dewumi, thank you very much for your question. I think I will also start by saying the slide will be shared. And second, your second question that talks about, we're talking about a credible valuation now. And a client is insisting that he can still get above what the market is saying. I think it is now our duties to let them know, because if you are requesting for a particular value, like you said, 40 million, for instance, like I used to ask my team in my office, if they said, the value is supposed to be 40 million, I will ask, have they sold? If they have not sold, so there are no evidence of sale. So we cannot categorically say that is the value. It is only when there are evidence of sales, then it can be relied upon. And that can also, in a way, the valuer can try to think not exact value. It is only a situation whereby there are evidence of sales, and when there are no evidence of sale, the market dictates what the value will be.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yomide. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Charity, for that. I mean, that's strictly in the industry. We've quite, just to add to what Charity said, we've got quite a lot of people who, I mean, in their minds, and that's actually just like Mr. Dewumi said. it's a major problem, you know. It's a major problem where the owners of property thinks that this is what the property is worth, you know. And that's why I say that almost everybody has now become a valuer, including owners of building. You know, everybody just have an idea of value. But the truth, we cannot detach all of the things that Charity has said with regards to the processes, with regard to the consideration, which of course most of these owners don't know or they don't have. In their heads, probably all that they think is that, oh, this is the cost. And again, we are not going to delve into that. Cost, of course, is different from value. Most times they want to look at cost and all of it. But thank you very much. And I think that's Charity answered that just the way it should be. So Charity, there are quite a lot of questions here. We will try and do justice to them, right? I can see already, so I start. Someone, ESV Ubong Essen, is saying, at what time should the valuation report be considered as being expired? At what point will you consider that a valuation report is expired?
What valuation reports can be considered expired when it is 3 years. By law, is 3 years. But sometimes we have, you know, the dynamics of our country as it were, whereby inflation is actually what is, you know, driving the property market. And that's why you see a valuation that is being done in January, for instance, for a particular amount, a particular value. As we speak today, the same property had gone up. And you see the owner of properties wants you to come and maybe revalue such property. So in a normal situation, in a normal client, it is 3 years.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, so I think ESV Ubang, that's it. 3 years, I mean, 3 years, I mean, legal, and again, just like you said, a lot of things now. You've seen a lot, the reason why a lot of people are now beginning to revalue their assets. In the like Charity talked about inflationary measure the other time. You talked about inflation, you talked about interest rates and all of those stuff. So the economic indices also impact to a large extent. So that's why you see most of the times you see people don't even want to wait. You don't, even you as the owner of the property, you don't want to wait for, I mean, Charity can confirm this, and I think it's something because you're on the field. You've done evaluation 6 months ago, and somebody is asking you to revalue again because, I mean, the indices are not the same any longer. The economic factors are now different. So, I mean, by and large, the economic considerations will go a long way to determine when and how the valuation, the need for the valuation be expired. But I think from the banking industry, just like Charity said, they used to look at 2-3 years and want to revalue and all that. Charity, let's go on to the other question. Favor Jacob is asking this question. This question is one area that basically it's one area that you want to usually get careful of. He said, thank you so much for your insightful teaching, ma'am. It was truly impactful and helpful. He said, I have a question. What are the essential legal requirements and documents that a valuer should be aware of and request when conducting a third-party valuation to ensure full compliance with the relevant laws and regulations? Third-party valuation. What should a valuer? I mean, this is a serious one, but again, we can. All right.
Oh, if I may answer that question, you know, we talked about the legality of every of our practice. Third-party valuation is something that we are not even supposed to talk about, let alone the document that will be supporting it. Because from practice, the end is usually not okay. So I will not even advise, so I don't know, because we don't do it. So I won't be able to say much about that.
Thank you very much, Charity. I mean, you noticed that I was also saying that when I saw the question, I mean, it's a Favor Jacob. That is basically, I mean, it's a very dicey one. It's a dicey one because the truth is, the issue with valuation is so complex that Charity talked about the standard of practice. And honestly, in standard of practice, there are few things that you must, as a valuer, try as much as possible to avoid. But that's it basically. So let's go to the other question, Charity. Sorry, we'll soon round up. Don't worry, Charity. I know there are quite a lot of them, but we have to deal with them. It just shows that a lot of people are very interested in this topic. Mr. Shegun Fale Bita is say, I'm sorry if I get the pronunciation of the surname wrong. I'm sorry. Say, good afternoon, ma, and thanks so much for your presentation. Please, despite the lay-down procedure, why is it that overvaluation is still common in the field? And what is the institution doing to curb this trend? Overvaluation. Charity?
Okay. Mr. Shegun, overvaluation is a crime, so also undervaluation. So when you talk about overvaluation in the industry, you know, sometimes valuation is actually based on opinions, what the valuer, and that is what I also talked about. You know, having carry out the necessary assessment, and you are trying to, the issue of overvaluation shouldn't be something that we should encourage. I will say that, you know, it's not something we should encourage. If you follow the laid down procedure and if you follow the uniform valuation standard, overvaluation shouldn't be something that we should consider. Then as to the industry, I think I will leave that one to the stakeholders. Now, if the governing body I'm very sure they are doing something about that. So I won't be able to say about that.
Okay, so I mean, thank you, Mrs. Shegun. On the issue, I mean, Charity said about overvaluation. I mean, I could probably just say with the institution, because I mean, the truth is, it's a profession, like Charity said earlier on, a profession that is regulated, right? Regulated, and I mean, properly regulated. I mean, it's an art of the law, and so it means that when you do something that is wrong, you are liable to be punished, or you are liable to, I mean, go through some penalties and all that. But I think that the institution are actually doing quite a lot. One of the things that institutions are doing, I think, just like some of the things that we are doing now, which is the contribution to the institution, is educating people to let them realize that this issue of overvaluation. And just like you said earlier on, the sin of overvaluation is undervaluation can even be, I mean, it's the same thing with overvaluation when you undervalue somebody else's property, you know. So I think there are channels of complaints that you can get to the institution to report when you feel that evaluation is, I mean, and there's the, I think, professional ethics practice committee where, yes, where people who engage in overvaluation are called to, because you must also give people the benefit of the doubt to bring about their workings and why the methodology. Because the truth is, most times, one of the reasons why we have overvaluation is because the basis of the method of the evaluation, the purpose of the evaluation actually determines the method that you employ. It could be that valuer A employ a particular method and valuer B employ a different method. And so if you don't understand, if you don't get your brief properly, and you use and employ a method that you should not employ, you will actually get overvaluation. So I think the institution have a channel where this can be discussed, it can be rectified, and where there are issues, and I think the institution actually employ an independent valuer to do it so that we get whatever. So there are channels, you know, there are channels, but like Charity said earlier on, it should not be encouraged. And if you had actually followed the process Charity laid down, all the things she said earlier on, I'm sure we're not going to be having this issue of overvaluation. Thank you very much. So the other question, Charity, this question is becoming, we have to take it on. Madam Charity, sorry, maybe you have a cup of water to take a cup of water. All right, so Mr. Kayode Nyade, oh, great. This our guy is asking this question. He says, well done, madam. How do we treat the issue of unstable exchange rates as regard to valuation of plant and machinery? Exchange rates. So, Charity?
Wow.
Mr. Kayode is asking that question.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Kayode. You know, the concerning plant and machinery valuation, you know, the exchange rate, for instance, if you're having to do evaluation for a plant and machinery as of January, whereby the exchange rate was way out of the board. And now the exchange rate is between 1,000 plus now, 1,200 thereabout. So, and as of January and February, that we were looking at an exchange rate of 1,800 to $1. So if you had value property, then, you know, that's why I talked about the dynamics of the economic factors, which is not stable. And that's why we are having a kind of problem. If you do evaluation, for instance, in January, that had carried an exchange rate of 1,800, and now they say, I'm very sure no clients will come back to you to come and reduce the value of their asset now. But peradventure they come back. That means what you need to do, you have to value your you have to carry out your valuation based on the prevailing market indices. Prevailing market indices, because that's why we have date of valuation. You understand? Evaluation that was done in January, and now, if you are now coming back, for instance, the stakeholders are calling that how come in January you have $1 billion and now you are returning a value of 800. You can argue with them that as at that time there is a date of valuation stating, and if they check the market indices as at that time, they will know that there is a higher value, you know, a higher exchange rate. And currently it has also reduced or come down. So you should do your valuation based on the market indices and at a date of valuation. That's why we have a date of valuation in our report. I hope I have answered.
Oh yeah, Charity. I mean, Mr. Kayode himself is an authority, and I'm sure you understand. So, but I think that is you talked about prevailing economy. I love that when you talked about the date and time, and that's when you were giving the presentation. One of the things you talked about was you talked about the date. And I think I was going to say that when I saw that question, I mean, I saw it too that, I mean, the issue of it's a major concern. Unstable interest rate is a concern, is a major concern. And that's why we are valuers. And again, that's why in our reporting, we must not be ambiguous. I mean, we must ensure that those information, Charity talked about information that should be in your report. It should be stated if you're using exchange rate at particular points. It should be stated in your report. You should let the report also have the prevailing economic condition as at that time. Okay, and I think if that is done, it helps us in terms of experience. You cannot rule out experience. I'm sure Mr. Kayode understands this very well in terms of plant and machinery. Like I said, it's a serious issue, and it's good that you raise it. But I think, like Charity answered, the issue of the date of valuation and the prevailing economic condition does matter. I mean, we see they tell us inflation rate, the interest rate, everything changes here and there. So even if you're importing all of those things into the country, you're not only looking at the cost of procuring those plant and machinery or cost of replacing them, but you're also looking at how the timing, freight, and all of those stuff. So I think, thank you very much, Charity. Mr. Kayode, if you feel that, if you want to say anything to it, I mean, we can bring you on and we'll gladly want to have your thought on it. Madam Charity, we have there are other questions. Let's quickly take them. Yusuf Oladejo is saying, this is a wonderful and insightful session. Kudos to the organizer. Thanks to the speaker. Session was ended. He said, my question, does title document affect the valuation? And how? Also, can you provide us an example of properties while exploring residual method? Talking about title document. You talked about it earlier on, how title, the consideration, title. So, Charity, over to you.
Okay. Title document definitely affects the value of valuation. And the reason being that, you know, like I said earlier on, I made mention of the substituting number of years. For instance, in Nigeria, by law, we have 99 years of 99-year term on a property by the Land Use Act. If you are valuing a property that probably it was, you have a certificate of occupancy that was issued last year, for instance, that means you still have like 98 years, you know, on that property. So it has a way, the number of years has a way of increasing the value. Then in a situation whereby you are like all these, I'm trying to remember, in Lagos State, whereby they give 25 years on a 25-year tenure. So if you have a 25 years tenure and you can't compare that to someone that has 99 years, so it has a way. And if you also have a omonile receipts and a property that has a C of O, they are two different, their values will be different, because you still have a lot to be done to get your title documented or registered for the omonile receipt. But with the one with a C of O, there is already an established route, which whatever document that will be given to you, like a deed of assignment, would have has its basis. Then I think the person talked about, what's the second question? I'm trying.
It talks about residual method of valuation, something about residual method also.
That method of valuation is actually used when a property has a developmental potential. And we're looking at, you know, for instance, a place like Lagos Island, you know, Lagos Island as it were, every street in Lagos Island is already commercialized, and you are having a very old structure that cannot meet up with the need of the environment. So what we are looking at is just the land that has developmental potential. So the old building will be pulled down, it gives way for the new property to come up. And in so doing, commercial property, and you can now, you know, maximize. We also talked about highest and best use in that regard.
Okay, thank you, Charity. Another question here. I can't see the name of this person, but I'm just going to read it. Say, good afternoon, Matt. During your lecture, you said that one shouldn't come out of school and start carrying out valuation. That experience is needed to do that. I totally agree. But is it now safe to say that valuation is a craft rather than art and sciences? So what do you want to say to that?
If you ask
is valuation
everything, you can also not do a craft without learning. So if you come out from school, you also need to learn. You don't come out one day and you want to start carrying out valuation. So you must learn systematically, you know, learn. Though you will now build on your residual knowledge from school.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you totally, and I think that it doesn't remove the fact that it's an art and sciences. I mean, you can't remove that part from it. Just like you also agree with what Charity said with regards to experience. Even those of us that were doing the valuation now, and I make both to say as Bosele and Co. Every now and then, regardless of the number of years that we've had, you still need to reinvent yourself. You need to learn every now and then. A lot of things are happening now. We're talking about these days. You're even talking about using drone for valuation, using different kind of method and all that. So it doesn't take out the fact that it's still an art and science, but like she said, experience, you actually don't come out of school, which you agree with us, and start practicing valuation. Valuation is a very, I'm sure, like Charity emphasized while saying these things, valuation is something that if I also made, I'm not too sure if my data is correct, but I think that most of the valuation we do in Nigeria, if not 70, 80% of the valuation we do in Nigeria, they are mortgage-based, you know, meaning that it's either you want to do them for the sake of lending, getting money and all that. But if you're using that, it means that you can't just present anything to you can't just do anything, because your valuation report will be what they will be used for an informed decision, and it will go a long way to affect whoever the lending institution is. So I think I agree with that. It doesn't remove the fact that, just like you also agree with us, it doesn't remove the fact that experience, like we all agree on this platform, and learning is of necessity. Thank you very much to that. Okay, the other question, we have about there are about 4 of them. Let's see how we can quickly move on with this. Even with the evidence of sale, the type of transaction must be ascertained. It is arm's length or not. Hence, there's nothing like owner's value. Okay, this is just a comment. The type of transaction must be ascertained. Okay, I mean, I think that is just, there's nothing like owner's value. Okay, I mean, thank you for that comment. This other person is saying, kindly state the law which says valuation is valid for 3 years. Charity, do you want to say something about that? Kindly state the law which says valuation is valid for 3 years. Do you want to respond to that?
I can't really say maybe quote the law now, but I know that in practice,
Great.
It is valid 3 years. Even by accounting standard, the banks that will take those reports to, they don't come back for revaluation until after 3 years.
Yeah, true. I mean, regulatory purpose. I mean, regulatory. We may not be able, like Charity said, in practice. Don't forget, these are rule of thumb. Basically, over the years, when you see from our interactions with the end users of this report, realize that even when you're doing a revaluation, maybe they have to wait for 2 years before you do the revaluation or thereabout. I mean, that's a subject for. I mean, that is subject for consideration. I doubt if is more of rule of thumb. We can argue back and forth, but it's more of rule of thumb. In fact, these days now, even you two can also agree with us that even the one that you do for even 6 months now, you do evaluation 6 months, you may probably go back to the field and do another one. So I agree with you, but it's something we can go back and forth on. But again, based on our experience in the field or practice, I think things that we have seen before now are usually, when we want to go back to the central bank and central bank regulations, we can actually find that I know there's a regulation with regards to that. We can always talk about it. Thank you very much for that comment. I mean, it's something we can look into. The other person here is saying, how do one handle a valuation for which a client couldn't provide title document, but valuation process has commenced and advance payments made? Charity, this person does not provide title document, and we have put in all the machinery, we have even collected the money. How do you go about it?
Okay, for every valuation, I remember that I mentioned during our discussion earlier on that there should always be an assumption and limitation that might arise as a result of the valuation process. So what it means is that there should be a caveat stating that these are the information we were not privy to. And that's why under title, in most valuation reports, you will see we did not cite, you understand? And they assume that it has a leasehold interest, and which is what is actually subsisting in Nigeria as we speak today.
Thank you. Very, 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 very straightforward. That's straightforward. That's straightforward. That's straightforward. Thank you very much. Maybe to just add to it is just to say the assumption. I love the fact that earlier on we talked about the components of valuation. Assumption is very key, limiting factors. And, your assumptions are your assumptions, and you make them clear and bold, So those caveats helps us as well as we can't have all of it's not our fault when you don't get this report, and it doesn't mean that without the title, we should not be able to produce the valuation report. We can use the limiting factors and as well as our assumption to cover all those areas, and believing that those property, we just assume that the title is good and marketable. And most times in your assumption, you just assume that it's a good title and it is marketable. Hence, it helps you with other other processes it helps you with your evaluation report. Thank you very much. Dari Rahim is saying, kudos to the organizer and the facilitator of this amazing seminar. My question is as follows: deed of assignment, gazette, governor's consent are title documents, but unlike CFO that has automatically unexpired time, how can this other title be considered? Sorry. How can these other titles be considered regarding terms, years, in valuation exercise? Yes, Charity, go ahead.
Okay. If you make mention of a deed of assignment and governor consent, deed of assignment most of the time takes their roots from the CFO, which is certificate of occupancy, because there will always be a title already. And on the premises of that title, that an assigned will be given, which is the deed of assignment. You are assigning your rights or your interest to the other party. So for a deed of assignment is also deemed as a title.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dari. We have two more. Let's quickly go. In the case of, Olayemi, Oladoyin is saying, in the case of two different conflicting valuation from different firms, how do we resolve to conclusion? What do we do? You have firm A have this value, firm B have this value. How can we resolve? And probably you are using them for the same purpose. How do you resolve it?
Okay, in a situation whereby you have a conflicting values from two different, I think the third valuer should be employed too. And that will eventually put rest to the discrepancies between the two earlier engaged valuers.
Charity, I also think that, okay.
And a further sometimes, like you rightly mentioned earlier on, and I said it also, valuation reports, when you don't use the appropriate approach, there will always be an incorrect assessment. If you don't use the correct, where you are supposed to use an income method and you are using
cost method.
You are using cost method, there will always be difference. And sometimes in areas like Ikoyi, cost method will not even work. So what we do is the market evidence, which is comparable property within that neighborhood. And when you are looking at a place like, you're talking about other states within the federation now, you cannot compare the property market in Lagos or Abuja to other states in Nigeria. So you shouldn't expect that their values will be the same thing. If you are valuing two valuers are valuing a property within Ikoyi, I make bold to say that the margin of difference will be very, very minute. But when you are dealing with, because there are a whole lot of information, you can get the data, it's just on a click of a button, you're getting the information required. But when you are doing mainland, for instance, at that point, is it that one person is using 100,000 per square meter and the other person is using 200? So there will always be a kind of discrepancies in their values.
Yeah, thank you, Charity. Very true. Very true. Very true. And I was going to say that, hey, you better come to us for data. Like you said earlier on, we have real estate reports. And in fact, I was going to also say earlier on that you just make sure, maybe talk at the back end, maybe can you just share the link to our real estate report? It's free. You can download them. We've been in this business for, having 30-something years experience in this industry, you cannot joke with it. And I must say, that's been a bedrock for us in terms of data. We pride ourselves in the fact that we've done so many assignments and we have data at the click of button. Those data are there. And maybe I should also add to that person who asked that question too. Even before, like Charities, even before we get the third person to decide, we both valuers can sit down together share your notes together. I mean, we look at the method, we look at everything. You'll just discover that most times, it's always the issue of methodology and all that. And our parameters, we're all valuers. I mean, these are things that we learn from school and experience. So we can look at our data, we can readjust, we can share those data's information, and where adjustment needs to be made, it can be made so that we don't need to go to having an independent valuer, for example, but where there are certain times, maybe not all of the times, that everybody sticks to their gun and say this is the value. That's where we can actually get it taught. We've had those experiences. I mean, we've had them a lot, and we'll go get a third party who can probably put final decision to that. This other person, Madam Charity. I'm sorry, we'll probably share. Okay, someone is saying, James Ademoye, say, please, can I have access to the recording? I've missed a lot from this impactful and profound session with Madam Charity. We'll share the recording will be available. This person, yes, Remu John, is saying, good afternoon, everyone. We deeply appreciate the organizers of this seminar. We wish you the very best. Thank you very much. I want to kindly request if we can have the slide presentation in our individual meals afterward, as we had in the past from the prestigious firm. Some of us joined very late. Thank you very much. Yes, John Ariam. Thank you so much for that compliment. I mean, just share your email addresses, drop it at the chat box. We'll ensure you get the slide. The slide will be available, the recording will be available. I mean, you have them. That's the reason, that's the reason why we're doing this. You have them at no cost. You have this information. Then the other, how can we, another person is asking here, how can we, okay, good. I can see, yes, James Ademoye, your email. Okay, please, the backroom hand, please make sure you pick all these email addresses and let's send them quickly before we wrap up. How can we verify the comparable data in Ikoyi? Know fully well that most property are mostly overpriced in that part of Lagos because of the type of buyers involved. I've answered your question, and I don't know, maybe Matarati want to answer that. Look at our reports. I mean, we just released the 2004, 2024 report just got released. So you can use that, and I'm sure that will help you a whole lot here. The charity said it earlier on, data. And we must be very careful. Everybody wants their property to be overpriced. Everybody wants high value and all that. But when you deal with an organization, an industry who have actually had this data for years, I mean, you can go to bed to sleep using those data. I mean, like you said, that's about it. Charles, I can still see, we'll have to wrap up. Okay, I need a slide. Please, Tokpe, please, can you address all this? I can see a whole lot of emails coming in. Take down all of those emails so that we can send them the slide as soon as the webinar is over. Yes, okay, the link, for as many of us who are, you can see the link to our annual report is already there on our chat box. Please, you can click it, it will take you directly to where the real estate report is. The link is there. Thank you very much. Thank you for sending that link. I hope everyone on this panel, on this webinar, send the email and all that. Let me read a few more. Charity really made a good point of the influence on exchange rate in values, date of valuation, and prevailing market indices. Answers the question rightly, ESV. Joseph Aja, thank you very much for that. ESV Obong SN is also saying thank you to that question that you asked about the quack and the institution. Simplicity and clarity. I mean, these are word of encouragement and appreciation from our listeners. Thank you for the enlightenment. And this person is asking about, I mean, we may not have time to take this comparison between method and cost method. This will make us begin to go into the practical aspect of the evaluation. Maybe at some point we'll do that. I am ESV Mariam Yusuf a year ago. Very educative seminar. Kudos to you, ma. Thank you very much, madam. We thank you very much for that. Good morning, host. The link sent to Amir. Okay, so no, this is, I mean, there's. So please, for as many of you who are here, go to our real estate report. The link is already there. This person is also saying, could you send me the copy of the slide? Yes, we have taken your email address. Tokwe, please make sure you take all the email addresses. I can see a whole lot of email addresses coming down here. Madam Charity, how do we thank you for doing this? We cannot thank you. Of course, we should be thanked. I mean, this is what Ubosele and Co have invested in all of us, and the best way to give back to the society is to just share this knowledge. So I want to say a very big thank you to you for doing this with us. It's been a wonderful time I've learned, and I believe a lot of people have also learned. And so please, I want to encourage our people. We've taken, I can see people are sending their email. Thank you. Bravo, 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 bravo. Keep sending your email address, and I can assure you get the slide. In fact, we can even do a bonus to you. For those of you who are sending your email, the last one that, the last topic that we dealt with, you are not there, was a powerful one: legal and regulatory issues in real estate development, the need for compliance. I will ask the team to also send that to you. So you have those two slides, the one for the month of April and the one for the month of May. So you have them. That's a bonus to you. And I think you should thank us for giving you that bonus. Charity, thank you once again. It's going to be a wonderful time in the month of June. Please keep your calendar open. We're going to send you the details and the link to another topical issue that we'll be dealing with in the month of June. We look forward to having you. We look forward to you inviting others. This is brought to you by Ubosi LA & Co., the prestigious firm, and we pride ourselves in what we do. And we look forward to engaging, having a relationship with you, doing a lot of business with you. So as we wrap up, we want you to still stay back. You can see some of the properties we have for listing, so that you can, Topper is going to say, yes, it's already rolling. So if you want us to do, you have clients who are interested in any of this property, feel free to reach out to us. And I believe that we'll do a lot of business together. Once again, it's a pleasure having you all. And we are glad that you joined us for this webinar. Looking forward to see you in the next webinar. Do have a wonderful day. And this webinar is brought to a close. Bye.